Good afternoon, good evening. I don't know what to say. I'm on a different time zone, so excuse my ignorance about the time zones in the US. We are what, 1 hour ahead of Mountain Time? Is that correct?
Yeah.
1 hour ahead of Mountain Time, so it's probably 5:30 where I came from. Well, first of all, let me thank you that you took the time to come here. The weather is terrible, and hopefully you didn't have too much trouble getting over here and attending this event. We will definitely make sure that it is worth your while and you get a good value out of your time. My name is Ray. I'm going to work with you for the next maybe, 5-6 hours, something like that?
Yeah.
Right?
6
Yeah.
hours.
Okay. You came prepared, right? So the idea is that you probably have some burning questions. You probably are entrepreneurs, or maybe some of you want to be entrepreneurs. I don't know what your background is. So what we will do is we will pass out 3x5 cards, and on those 3x5 cards there is a couple of pieces of information that I would like for you to write down. Okay? So give me a second. Can we pass out the 3x5 cards? And here is what I'm looking for from you. I would like to know what is the nature of your business. Okay? I mean, are you trying to do apparel? Are you trying to do develop apps? What is the nature of your business? And if you don't have a business, that's okay. What is it that you are thinking about? Not everybody here may have a business at this point, but some of you may have an idea that you want to pursue. The next question I would like for you to put down is, what are the key challenges ahead of you? So here, if you already have a business, what are some burning questions that you are struggling with? What are the issues that bother you? If you don't have a business, that's okay. Then write down what is holding you back. Why are you not starting it? What is holding you back? And the third one is, I am about to start a newsletter with Do Magic for Your Business or Do Magic for Your Life. That's the title of my book, by the way, Do Magic with Your Life. So if you want to be on my mailing list, then I would like for you to tell me your email address. Okay? There will be no selling of any email addresses or anything of that sort. I assure you that's not where we are going. The idea is only to assist entrepreneurs get started and give them some tips. I have worked with hundreds and hundreds of entrepreneurs, and believe me, many of the new entrepreneurs are so lost that I am shocked. So hopefully all the dues that I paid, I lost a lot of my hair, most of my hair has gone gray, and I'm saying if you can benefit from my experience, then why not, right? All right, so those are the things that I'm looking for, and once I start getting the 3x5 cards back from you, I will read what the nature of the business is, and I will read these two items, and then I will try to address the questions that you are posing. Could I have done this in a different way? I mean, I could have come here with a canned PowerPoint presentation, right, and tried to push my agenda on you, the audience. I didn't want to do that. To me, that really doesn't make sense if you are trying to get something started. This is not about me. This is about you. So that is why I did not come here with a PowerPoint presentation. Although I have several sitting in my laptop, and I can rattle those off until you are blue in the face, but that's of no good to you. That's of no benefit to you. All right. So this card says that you design and build a new type of clock. That is the business that you are in, and my clock is different, all right? And lack of money and time. How burning is this desire? How much of a burning passion do you have? Are you willing to really give up what you are doing and jump with both feet? Lack of money and time. So think about it this way. I am an investor also. If I see a good proposal, regardless of whether the economy is in recession or whether the economy is booming, if I get a good proposal and I see that I can get good returns, then the lack of money issue tends to fade away into insignificance. So lack of money, I would not really hold that back. If you are really solving a problem that somebody has, you can probably find an investor who is willing to put money into your project. The next question is, how much control of the company are you willing to give up? With money comes constraints and loss of control. So that is something that you'll have to think about. And time. Look, if you have a dream, and if you haven't started pursuing your dream, you are on a one-way street. Each one of us is on a one-way street. You know what I mean by that? Time is a one-way street. You lose money, you can regain the money. You lose property, you can go buy property, you can regain property. You lose time, January 20th, 2016 is never going to come back. So when I hear this thing that I don't have time, I say, if you have a strong and burning passion and a dream, why are you holding yourself back? Why are you not moving in that direction? Okay, I understand you may have family responsibilities or whatever. At least start taking some steps. At least start defining what your dream is. I believe I have answered this question. If you want me to elaborate more, I'm happy to go into it, or you can meet me after the session is done. Okay? Have I answered this question reasonably well? I don't know your exact situation, but all I can say is lack of money, I don't buy that. Lack of time, you really need to think about, is this really important to you? Let me ask you this. Do you have a guarantee that you will be alive tomorrow? Not a single person in this room can give me a guarantee that you will be alive tomorrow. Is that correct? Yes. And when that call comes, do you want to be in remorse that I should have created this clock and solved this problem in the world? Think about it. You want to discuss more, meet with me after the session. I'll put this away. The next card says Global Strategy Consulting, funding for my non-profit. That is the biggest challenge that you are facing. So is this Global Strategy Consulting a not-for-profit organization, or is this going to be for-profit?
Two different things. The non-profit organization is what I'm setting up, and funding will go to provide services via that nonprofit.
So are you setting up two different organizations?
No, I already have private business.
Oh, you do? Okay. Okay.
But my challenge is not in my business. My challenge is in the new business that I'm setting up, the nonprofit.
And what is the objective of the nonprofit?
Empowerment, entrepreneurship training in developing countries.
Okay. So you would like to set up a not-for-profit organization for empowerment, education, and training in parts of the world where it is most needed.
Exactly.
Is that correct? Wonderful. That's a great noble objective. And your challenge is to get the funding for the not-for-profit.
Exactly.
Is that correct? So not-for-profit organizations typically do not get funded by investors. It is very difficult, very, very difficult, because at the end of the day, the investor is going to say, how do I get my money out? And what multiple will I receive back, right? So your sources of funding probably will be sponsorships or some money from your pocket to fund that organization. Or you can try UN, and you know the bureaucracy, the bigger and the more worldwide organization that you deal with, the more bureaucracy you will have to deal with.
See, the reason it's on a challenge, because there is plenty money.
Oh, okay.
You can tap into, but it's a challenge precisely because what you said, the bureaucracy and seeking the grants and getting approvals.
Right, right. So that is going to be a huge challenge. I would say if you can align with another organization that is not competing in the same space, even though that would be a not-for-profit as well, then you can start small and work in parallel with them and add more value to their organization and be able to channel some funds towards your dream, which is what you just described. That would be my recommendation. Otherwise, you are going to deal with a lot of bureaucracy and keep fighting all the time to get funding for your organization. Believe me, there are thousands and thousands of not-for-profits who are all competing for the same pie. So now you become one more person who is competing for the same pie. Many times it is a lot easier to form an alliance and then use the alliance to further your objective and your dream. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've just received the same advice yesterday, so I fully agree. This is something I have to look at.
Yeah, so I would recommend taking that route because it just makes life easier for you. And believe me, running 2 or 3 different organizations is really going to take a lot out of you. So think twice before you get serious. So at some point, you'll have to decide whether to continue the not-for-profit company or whether to continue with your global strategy consulting. Because unless you have very strong partners who can take over some parts of the business, this will become very, very draining and time-consuming for you. So be aware of that. All right?
Well, I would say, too, figure out a corporate community that would benefit from a lot of entrepreneurs in a development community, too. Maybe they can fund some of that.
Absolutely. So
I don't know how you get that, but.
So find out corporations is what you said, right? Find out corporations who are willing to work with you. Is that what you said?
Yeah, basically who would benefit from a bunch of entrepreneurs. from
Right.
different countries.
Right. That's a good idea. So I would encourage that as well. Again, keep in mind that I don't have all the answers, all right? Nobody in this world has all the answers. So I'll share with you my thoughts. I'll share with you my experience. And some of you may also want to talk to each other. So feel free to network. Okay, let me move on to the next one. Nature of the business is HR. I'm assuming that is human resources. Key challenges. But you didn't write down the key challenges, so I don't know what to make of this. Yes, please. So your key challenge is to spread the awareness of what you are doing. Is this something that you have started or you want to start? You have started. Okay. Okay. All right. May I ask how long have you been doing this?
This I've been doing for
More
more than 12 years.
than 12 years?
12 years, but I just started this in US here. I've started it for the past 2 months.
Oh, the HR business here, you just started in 2 months. Okay. All right. So I have been down this journey before many times. I forgot to give you my introduction. I was so eager to get started. Today, I am in my 7th and 8th startup, just so you would know. And my kids many times ask me, Dad, when are you going to retire? And I say, retire is made of 2 words, right? Re and tire. So first I have to get tired, then I will retire. The bottom line is, I don't know what retirement means. Anyway, starting something from ground zero is something that I have done, let's see, 7 times now, and I am on my 8th. I've never bought a running business. The only running business I got was from my father when I lost him at age 12. So at age 13, all of a sudden I found myself running a business, and that was in India. It's a long story. If I tell you that story, it will be tomorrow morning, and my story still would not be done. So I won't go there. Let me ask you this. Do you know what customer segments and what are the profiles of the customers that you want to go after? Have you identified that? See, in the book on Do Magic, the D is to define what your business is about. D is to define who are your likely customers. And then the D is to define what are the needs of those customers, what are the needs that are already being met, and what are the needs that are not being met. Okay? All of that homework has to be done, because without that, you really can't proceed further. And then the question is, once I have that, how do I get my word out? Okay? So the very fact that your business is in HR tells me that you will probably focus on medium-sized business organizations. The small business owner may or may not need a whole lot of HR support, but as they start growing bigger, 30, 40, 50 people, 60 people, they all of a sudden need some HR people, okay, to support them. One model that I have seen succeed before, so again, in the Do Magic, the O is to observe who has done this before and check the objectivity, or how objective is your dream. Okay, so observe who has done this before. One model that has worked very successful is you work with business owners and let them know that you can be their outsourced HR manager. And that has a certain nice ring to it, because now they don't have to hire a full-time HR manager. Show them your credentials. I don't know what certifications and stuff like that you have, but if you have certifications, show them that I'm certified by SPHR, which is the Society for Professional Human Resource Managers. Show them the certifications, give them your credentials, and say, look, you don't have to hire me. I will be your outsourced HR manager, and here are the things that you are doing. It's taking your time away from running your business. You can outsource it, and I can take care of all of those things for you. But the pounding of the pavement and making those contacts is something that you will need to do. Outsourcing that, I don't think is possible. At the end of the day, the owner has to have the passion to drive it forward. Okay? Did I answer your question? Did I give you some ideas? All right. The next card says, nature of business is video marketing, key systems for freelancers and small businesses. I don't know what is meant by key systems for freelancers and small businesses. I don't know what.
The idea there is simply getting it set up with like CRMs and their invoicing stuff, and all the stuff that they should have in place. It's kind of the basics of business, but they don't yet.
Okay, so is video marketing a separate business and the key systems for freelancers a separate business?
It's both. It's personal brand business, just starting on the side. So we've got experience in both.
Okay.
A little bit and kind of running together.
Okay, got it. Challenges: keep getting the word out, getting in front of people with a clear, concise message. Okay, if you are targeting small businesses, that's what it looks like, freelancers and small businesses, a good way to reach them is through chambers of commerce. I have done that myself. And what I would do is I would look for speaking opportunities through the chambers of commerce. and register with as many chambers of commerce as possible and see if they are willing to host you as a speaker. Now, what they will not like is you pitching your business. There are different forums that the Chambers of Commerce organizes for pitching your business. When you go there as a speaker, make sure that you have a clear sense of whether you are allowed to pitch your business or are you going to run a tutoring or a training session. You get the idea? Because there are times when you should not pitch and just run a training session and let people ask you, how can I use your service or whatever. So be careful about that. Because if the Chamber of Commerce senses that all you are doing is pitching all the time, they may not invite you again to be a speaker or something. Then the negative publicity starts spreading. So just be careful on that. So challenge is to get the word out, get in front of people with a clear, concise message. So Chambers of Commerce meetings are where most small business people congregate. And I think there are meetups also where small business people might be coming together. Now, it is just not enough to run a tutoring session or pitch your business. The thing I would try to figure out is, what is my value proposition? Why would Ray, I'm taking it upon myself, why would Ray spend 1 or 2 hours listening to your speech? What am I going to get out of it? So think about the value proposition and then benchmark your competition. The third thing I would recommend there is to find out what are the pain points. Now, small businesses are spread across dozens and dozens and dozens of sectors. Are you trying to focus on food service businesses? Are you trying to focus on retail operations? So you may need to think in terms of how you can tailor your message for those different segments. One of the challenges in this one is going to be, what is the cost of acquisition of a customer and how easy or difficult it is for you to acquire customers. So that is another point that you will need to think through. Because if you are doing this single-handedly, I am assuming you are single-handedly doing this right now, then your time is at a premium, right? And very quickly, you will need to figure out who is your target audience and then how do you reach them, and then how do you custom make your message for these 2 or 3 or 4 different sectors. Small businesses are spread out all over the place, right? From laundromats to retailers to car wash operations, every kind of thing is there. Are you trying to reach all of them at once?
Yeah, definitely looking at where I'm first starting and focusing is at the video marketing level. Basically, there's a way to track who's already running ads in certain areas. And I think where I'm going to niche down initially is almost by region and area.
Okay.
Richardson, just, hit places that are already advertising and spending that money on Google to do that, because video marketing can be a solution to what they're trying to accomplish with those ads. So that's the initial thought, anyway.
Yeah, so you are already beginning to kind of stratify and segregate the different segments in different ways. Geographic segmentation is quite fine, but within the geographic segmentation, you will still have many verticals and many sectors. So you'll need to think through all of that. Okay? Have I answered your question?
Absolutely.
All right, very good. This card says, put it here. This card says e-commerce site launch. Okay, that is the nature of the business. Limited time and is it hierarchy? Limited time and hierarchy. I don't know how hierarchy is coming into this, but the
It's when you're on a team with people and maybe you have ideas, but they're not always, ideas are just ideas to some people. This isn't for my startup business, this is for just, 100% work on
you have a boss. Your boss kind of has the final say on certain things. There may be a boss's boss. There may be a boss's 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 boss. How do you get through that when you want to start doing intrapreneurship? You have good ideas. You want to start spurring new ideas within a.
Okay, let me repeat that so make sure everybody got that. So you are not really trying to start a business of your own, but you are promoting this idea within an organization, and you are running into hierarchy issues. Is this within a government organization?
NGO.
NGO, okay. A hierarchy typically gets in the way, especially if the organization has very tight silos and people are paranoid about other people stepping on their territory. So the question is, do you have a feel for whether the hierarchy that is trying to hold you back is just one level above, or is it 2 or 3 or 4 levels above? Do you have a clear sense of that?
2 or 3.
2 or 3 levels above. So it is the hierarchy that is all the way, the one above you and the one above you and the one above that. Is that correct? Okay. Again, here you may want to think in terms of value proposition and find an opportunity where the organization gets stuck. Let me give you another hint, because I have done this many times in my career. I have worked in companies like DuPont. I have worked in companies like Applied Materials. I also worked for a medical products company over my career. I worked for a company that is here in town, and it's called Frito-Lay. You have heard of Frito-Lay? All right, so I'm very familiar with these hierarchical issues. What I would do is, if the people above you, 2 or 3 ranks above you, if they have annual objectives and goals that they need to meet, figure those out, or at least ask them to share those with you. Are you with me so far? Once they share that with you, find out how you can add value to their achieving those goals through what you are trying to provide. See, now all of a sudden you have changed, you have turned the table around. It's not your idea against what they want to do. You are saying, okay, this is what you are being held accountable for, right? And here is a way to do it. Plant the seed. It may not work right away, but in the future it might work. And I would not give it up. You know, first time you plant the seed, they may say, I'm not interested, whatever, this, that, and the other. Find another objective. Find a place where they are having trouble, where they are getting stuck, trying to meet their objective, and come at it from that angle. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, the next business is analytical insight through geolocation. IoT swarm, Internet of Things swarm. The swarm is throwing me off. What do you mean by IoT swarm? Thousands of devices are already there. Okay, and you are trying to boost your selling efficiency. All right.
It's through selling efficiency. It's a long tail play. So everybody wants top line growth is I can address your needs for this year. What we address is efficiency year over year. So the bigger the company, the more importance there is on selling, on achieving efficiency. As a startup, it's really hard to get into big businesses. So when you start with the small and mid-sized businesses, selling efficiency can be a challenge, right? They want the top line growth, not necessarily the bottom line cost savings.
Right. So is this something that you are trying to start, or is it already happening?
It's already in motion.
It's already in motion.
Yeah.
Okay. And you are trying to increase your selling efficiency. Do I understand that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what is the so the product or the output from your service is analytical insight. Is that correct?
Yeah. Essentially, we address large construction sites.
Okay.
It's, are you on time and on budget? So answering those 2 key questions, which is a very complicated situation.
Okay. So I'm going to have to use the board for a second now. here are some things to think about. Who is the user and what is the benefit they are going to get? And who is the payer? In those situations where these two are the same entity, building selling efficiencies is somewhat easier. I don't know in your case.
They'll be split. Which pair of the gem?
I've been down that road as well. It was in medical products, because in medical products the user is the patient,
Pair is
the service provider is the doctor, the payer
insurance.
is the insurance company, and then the regulations on top of that make life even more difficult. So that was a nightmare that we had to go through. We came out of it, don't get me wrong, but we had to think about all of that. All right. So I don't know how you are pitching your idea and to whom, but I can guarantee you one thing. If this person is not sold on the idea, you are not going anywhere. Just not happening. So the question is, can you create a value proposition for which this payer cannot say no? That will be the trick. And simultaneously work with the user so that the user doesn't get a chance to say, I used their service and if it was of no use to me. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So you'll need a dual strategy. In my case, I needed to have a 4-pronged strategy because I had the regulations on one side, hospital on one side, insurance company, doctor, and the patient was totally ignorant. The patient didn't even know what the product does and how they benefit. So leave that aside. So you'll need a dual strategy, addressing both of these stakeholders. Okay? Now, to carry that just one more step further, I would recommend that you create an analysis matrix where you find out the needs and wants of both of these constituents and then distill them so that you can extract out the most critical needs and wants for both of them. Some of them may overlap, some of them may not overlap at all. And then create your strategy around it, and that will cut out a lot of fluff that might have gotten into your system. Now, granted, I answered this at a higher level because I don't know the intricate details of your business. But at a higher level, I gave you a direction, hopefully, that you could use going forward. Does that help? Awesome. Import-Export International Supply Chain Service Company. So this person wants to find and meet potential customers who need pipe equipment and cement. How to find and meet potential customers who need pipe equipment and cement. And then the other one is factory machinery. Oh, okay, so those are there are 3 different product lines: pipe equipment, cement, factory machinery. All right. Have you narrowed down the countries that you want to deal with? Or is it wide open? Please, go ahead. Yeah, please speak up. Yeah. You are trying to market in the US? You are trying to expand your market in the US? Okay, so your major market is in Africa right now, but you are trying to enter the US market. Okay, okay. Have you started any work yet, or are you just beginning to think about it?
Actually, we have one deal right now.
You have one dealer.
No, we have one deal. I'm working for one deal in the US right now with one American company for pipe equipment.
Okay. Pipe equipment, cement, and factory machinery is what you would like to market, right? In the US. Okay. Have you identified what are the major customers for these types of products? You have? Okay. Here is what I would do. Unless you are backed by a very powerful multinational company, a lot of these big names like Home Depot or Lowe's or other types of big chain distributors are not going to talk to you. Most likely, it will be very difficult. Okay? I don't know if you have tried to contact them. Getting them to return phone calls is nearly impossible. I'm in that boat on one of the products I'm trying to create. So I have decided I'm not going to chase the big names. I'm going to go after the second and third level customers who don't have the leverage to command good prices from the bigger suppliers overseas. Are you with me? The big multinationals don't want to deal with the smaller distributors here. So that would become my focus. And I would start a dialogue with them. Okay? That would be my recommendation. And once you grow big enough, then the Home Depots and Lowe's will be interested in talking to you. There is one caveat though. The caveat, or one exception. The exception is that if you have a unique product that is new to the US market, then you might still have a chance to get into those bigger stores. But if you have products which are already competing with other products, I would take the approach that I just mentioned to you. Okay? All right. All right, this card says OD. How many of you are engineers? Please raise your hand. When you hear the term OD, what does that mean to you? Overdrive. What does it mean to you? Say that again? Overdose. Oh, that coming from an engineer. That's interesting. Yeah, what does it mean to you?
Organization
Well,
development.
you are an outlier because you are already in HR. Okay? So a typical mechanical engineer, when they see the word OD, you know what it means to them? Outside diameter. Okay, anyway, yeah, here OD means organization development. This card says this person wants to do OD and employee engagement consulting. The challenge they are having is finding customers, remaining profitable, and hiring additional consultants. All right, so this means this is an ongoing business. Is that correct? Yeah? It's an ongoing business? This is from Thomas, so you all can talk a little later. All right, so keep in mind one thing. I'll be brutally honest with you, okay? If you are trying to offer this as an external resource, which is what it seems like, when the economy turns down, your organization will be one of the first contractors to be let go. Okay? Every business has certain anchors or moats. Moats is a word that Warren Buffett uses. I use the word anchors. What does it mean? Moats and anchors are those things that act like hooks. So if I am providing a service that my customer can easily bring in-house, then the anchor I have is not a strong anchor. If I'm providing a service that my customer thinks is not all that value added, but it is good to have but not essential to have, then my anchor is not a strong anchor. Are you with me? The only reason I'm cautioning you about this is there is an economic downturn that is likely to set upon us. I don't think it is here yet, and I don't think it will be as bad as 2008. And if you have not understood what I'm saying, is what I'm telling you is that the market is experiencing very, very high volatility. How down it will go, how deep it will go, is anybody's guess. Okay, the people who are meeting at Davos are probably writing your future and my future. So we don't have control over those things. In those types of situations, if I see that the business I am in doesn't have deep anchors or deep moats, my guard goes up very quickly. And I start thinking about, if there is a downturn, how will I survive? Okay, I'll give you an example. 9/11 happened. Nobody could have predicted that. And overnight, I lost more than half of my revenue source. I mean, it was like 9/11, and 2 days later, I am seeing 50 to 60% of the contracts I had were being canceled. And you know what business I was in? I was in the training business, which is similar to what this is, OD and employee engagement consulting. Okay? I'm not trying to discourage you. All I'm saying is watch out. The way the economy is going and the way the Fed is acting, we don't know if the Fed is going to do 2 more cycles of tightening or 4 more. I can guarantee you, if the Fed does 4 more cycles of tightening, the market is going to take a very, very big hit. So we can't control those things. Yes, you have a question?
Asking sort of, no, I noticed. Is there a way to tweak an idea or a company like that would create more of that anchor? Is there a way to instill yourself and to be a little more essential?
You may not like my answer. Let me sketch out something for you. Oh. Can I ask you why you got into this business?
What I got into?
Yeah.
I guess I'm passionate about having people like their work.
All right. The question of passion has come out. People who are entrepreneurs, they are a crazy bunch of people. And it includes me, because I'm an entrepreneur and I'm crazy enough to do it for the 8th time. Look, this is in my book, but I'll sketch it out for you, and there is a lot more detail in the book as well. When you create your dream, when you think about what business I want to get into, there are 3 forces that you need to look at. One is your passion. What am I passionate about? The other force is your skills and abilities. Okay? And the third force is market opportunity. You may be the best trainer in the world. You may be the best HR person in the world. You may be the best organizational development person in the world. If the market opportunity is not there, in other words, if this circle has moved out, then you don't have the confluence of all the 3 forces. What I tell entrepreneurs day in and day out, your dream should lie at the confluence of those 3. If you are independently rich and you have got tons of money, and this market opportunity moves out, you can still sustain yourself, because you are not dependent on the revenue stream. You can do what you want and do it all day long. No problem at all. So let us be very practical and not lose sight of it. Okay? I'll come to you in just 1 second. Let me finish this thought and I'll come to you, okay? So the question here is finding customers, remaining profitable, and hiring additional consultants. Given the situation of the economy, what I would do is immediately I would establish a metric, and that metric is called dry well time. Okay? Dry well time means if my revenue spigot is shut off today, how long can I last as a business before the business goes belly up? All right? And the reason I'm saying is because that is the state of the economy and that's where it seems to be headed. Now, I would create that metric and I would compare that to another metric, and the second metric is from the point of contact to the point where I can get cash from a customer, what is the cycle time on that? Okay, so let us say that the dry well time is 4 months. In other words, I have got cash that will last me only 4 months. You got the idea? And if you find that your point of contact, time of contact to the cash time is 9 months, what does that tell you? That tells you are in very deep trouble. A loss of revenue, you are not going to be able to withstand that in a pretty way at all. So those are important things I would start putting in place at this point. And finding customers, we have already discussed, depending on the nature of who your target segment is, chambers of commerce, working with other organizations in the area, giving speeches. I give speeches at many professional meetings all the time. American Society for Manufacturing Engineers, American Society for Quality. I'm speaking almost 2 to 3 days a month on pro bono basis. Because what it does is it stirs up, it creates my network very fresh, have a good LinkedIn profile. Right on LinkedIn, I'm beginning to pick up business through LinkedIn. If you don't have a profile, please create one and start posting articles. You will get noticed, believe me. It takes time, but you will get noticed. And having said all of that, just keep in mind, keep your guard up with regard to the economy as well. Okay? Let me move on to the next one. Financial services is the nature of this business and gaining the trust of my potential clients. Okay. Let me put myself in the shoes of a potential client. You tell me you offer financial services. Why would I, first of all, why would I believe that my money will be safe, or you will really take care of my money and my finances more than me? How will you convince me that? So here are things, as a customer, I'm telling you I'll be looking for. I'll be looking for credentials. I'll be looking for references. But the trouble with references is most people give you references who are already going to say a good word about you. Right? So instead of asking you for references, I'll just ask you who are the customers you have dealt with over the last 5 years. Give me some names. And who can vouch for you? Yeah.
So the financial services are broad in nature.
That's correct.
The main component is payroll services for small businesses.
Okay.
Not in a major market. I mean, like Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, Austin.
Right.
For small businesses in small cities in the state of Texas. So payroll, insurance, maybe individual group, accounting and bookkeeping services.
Okay, great. So it is payroll and those types of things, not financial management for high net worth individuals, right?
Right.
Okay. So here I would first of all, gaining the trust of your potential clients. So let me ask you this. Potential clients, okay, so these are new clients. Got it. New clients. All right. What registrations or certifications has your business already acquired?
Well, for accounting, certified accountants, payroll certifications as well. So the people that handle, including myself, accounting, having finance experience, several years. I've also been a business consultant for several years as well. So I worked in the industry.
Okay. So has anybody said that they find it a little difficult to get started with you because of a trust issue, or is this your fear?
Well, I believe that because, it's not a person-to-person transaction, not a face-to-face, since we're focused on smaller cities in the state. We won't actually physically be there to onboard them as clients. So I perceive that there's going to be a trust issue you know, I think pros and cons people can understand, but risk and reward is, you know, the risk of going to become someone that you haven't met.
Right, so it is the newness. I'm meeting you for the first
Yeah.
time, right? Why would I trust you?
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
The best way to work around all of that is to network. Look at your existing customers and just ask them for a referral. And don't ping them too much. I do this all the time. And I'll give you an example. There was one referral I got, and through that referral, I got into Dell. Dell became my customer, and I did more than $5 million of revenue with Dell in a matter of 6 years as a training and consulting services provider. The power of word of the mouth is totally invaluable. Regardless of what the internet says and what anybody says, you get referrals, work your referrals.
So how do you get referred into, say you're working in a town of, I don't know, say 50,000, how do you make an influence in a town?
Do you have any customers there?
Not currently,
Not yet.
no.
Okay. Do you have any customers in an adjoining town?
Not yet. I do have connections in some small towns as friends that have business owners.
Okay.
Or business owners.
Okay. Use them. You have to start somewhere. So this is something that you are just starting, is that correct?
Not yet. We'll be starting launching at the end of the year.
Right, right. What I meant is this is not ongoing. This is a new thing that you are going to start. Yeah. So in that case, you don't have customer referrals, but you can use friends or other, people that trust you, and they can give you referrals. That's how I would start. Okay? And it doesn't hurt to do 1 or 2 pro bono assignments. And let the customer check out your services. They have got nothing to lose.
We plan to offer for free for a period of time, maybe a quarter or a few months.
Exactly.
We want to try it.
Exactly. So de-risk from a customer standpoint what is at stake for them. So de-risk that. So you get referrals and you de-risk. That should give you an easy entry. Okay? This one says social e-commerce for clothing and funding. Wonderful. First of all, in the clothing business, there is a lot of competition already. Yes, please.
Our standpoint is that actually this is for online closing. So what we do is that we need technology to get your measurement for the online shopping, which nobody has done before. And at the same time, we are leaning towards sharing economy rather than working with brands. So we are trying to bring individual designers to our website. At the same time, we are providing a really good technology for users and return and reduce the return rates, which is a really high major problem in the online industry.
Okay. So if I can summarize what you just said, you would like to sell clothing online, is that correct? And be able to take measurements online, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
We are using image processing technology.
Yeah. Okay. So your question is, how do you get funding?
Actually, my question is that because this is not like a seed funding is something that you usually can get through angel investors.
Yeah.
But we are looking for someone who can take us to like round A, round B, someone with really good connection. How can I find that person? How can I find a person who's interested in funding like in a seed investment and then take us to next level, add value to our company at the same time?
You want somebody to invest in your company and then take you to the next level.
No, add value. So like
Add value.
use their connection.
Use their connection. So you want to do what people do on Shark Tank. Do you see Shark Tank?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you this. What is in place today that an investor would want to get started with you? Do you have any revenues? Do you have any basic infrastructure?
Yeah, we have the prototype ready.
You have the prototype ready. Have you sold anything?
No, we didn't launch it yet.
Oh, so this is still an idea.
No.
It's beyond an idea, you have a prototype.
Yes.
You have a prototype website or you have a prototype?
So the
I would-
technology is proven.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What is holding you back from doing some sales and establishing a record that you can build some customers, those customers were happy and they came back, or they referred other customers to you? What's holding you back from doing that? If your website is already ready,
Yeah, that's the thing. So we were self-funded, so we spent all our savings.
Okay.
And developed the prototype, but the problem is that in online shopping or online selling, the interface plays an important role.
of course.
So we are, like, we burn all our money. The prototype is functionally ready, but in terms of web design and being ready to launch for a customer is not ready.
Okay, so you have a prototype of the website ready, but it is not a fully usable website from a customer standpoint.
So
Are
we're
you-
gonna lose the market if we launch with that. That's what
Are you completely out of money at this point, or do you have some more money that you can put in?
we're done.
You're done? How much of the company are you willing to give away? Are you willing to give away 70, 80% of the company? Are you willing to give away 60%? Are you willing to give away 51%? Good luck. I'm sorry, I have to be brutally honest. I'm not here to sugarcoat things or lead you down the wrong path, okay? Honestly speaking, you are pre-revenue. And the hurdles needed to go from a prototype website to a customer usable website has other risks and pitfalls in it. You understand my point? So if I'm an investor and I don't get 80% control of the company, it's highly unlikely that anything is going to move forward. I'm not saying it is impossible. All I'm saying is it will be very, very difficult, and you will still end up giving away a lot of your company. So think about it. Provide services to small retailers. The challenge is how to get my people to perform highly, how to get my people to perform highly or to care, and how to get myself to lead better. Is this something that is already ongoing, or are you thinking of starting this? Yeah, ongoing, okay. How to get my people to care, right? There is a very good book. It was written by an author out of India. I don't remember the name of the author. Many people say customers come first, but what many business owners are realizing is employees come first, okay? Because employees become your first point of contact with the customer very often. So if the employees are not treated well, it is very likely, and I'm not saying that's happening in your case, please don't misunderstand, okay? All I'm saying is, the better you treat your employees, the better the chances that your customer interface and customer experience will be great, and the customers will come back. Okay? Look at the difference between Walmart and Starbucks. Granted, I'm giving you two extremes, or other companies where employees are treated very well. Another one that comes to mind is Chick-fil-A. Their employees are treated very well. Whole Foods employees are treated very well, whereas other grocery store employees are not treated very well. Naturally, it reflects on the interface between the customer and the employee, and the customer sees the company through the experience that they got dealing with the employee, isn't it? So that would be a good place to start. And how to get myself to lead better? That I will have to work with you for 2-3 months if I have to walk. No, everybody can be a great leader, don't get me wrong. Leadership can be learned. Some people are born with it, some people need to learn it, but that's okay. You can learn to be a great leader. A few basic things to keep in mind. we all have this tendency to judge and evaluate. I'll tell you what the leading companies are doing in terms of employee engagement and treating employees fairly. And this goes counter to what many people believe and what many people think. One of the first things they have done is give up annual reviews. Annual reviews are one of the worst ways to evaluate employees. I know I had to do it when I was in the corporate world, and I used to fight it. I used to sweat it, I used to postpone it. How can you evaluate a person's performance for the whole year in a matter of 1 hour and pass a judgment on that, right? And then give them a grade on a scale of 1 to 5, and the poor folks, if they fall in the bottom 10%, many companies have this policy that everybody who falls in the bottom 10% are going to get thrown out. Are you nuts? If you have to lay off people, who is really responsible for that? Tell me who wakes up in the morning and goes to work with the intention of screwing up. There is hardly any person who does that. So 80 to 90% of the issues lie with the business leaders and the managers. Okay? I have been in that boat and I have fought it. So yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to support what you're saying. Is that your GE conducted a survey which 99% of the employees say that they want to be successful in their career.
Yeah.
And recent study of Harvard Business School reveals that people don't want to fail. Nobody wants to fail in this world. I mean, even in their career, they don't want to fail. What prevents them from being successful is what their study is all about. And that's where the managerial leadership skills come into play.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So here are things that I have implemented, and I inherited a department where the employee turnover was 30%. Okay, in other words, every 3 years my whole department had turned over, and it was a deeply technical, skill-based employee base that I was dealing with. In a matter of 1 year, I took that down to less than 5%. And the VP of HR came to me and said, "What are you feeding your employees? Why is it that employees from other departments want to join your department?" So I'll share that secret with you. I think you want to make one point, so make your point quickly and then I'll share that secret with you. And this will be very useful for you right away. Yeah, go ahead.
And the one point that the Harvard Business School study made was one of the professors of Harvard Business School studied as to what is the impact of bell curve
Yeah,
used by GE
yeah,
for years on the organizational performance.
sure.
And he found that the use of bell curve on organizational performance,
Right,
I mean, it actually erodes organizational performance if you continue to use it beyond 3 years. So if you're segregating your employees into say
top performers, whatever, yeah, bottom performers, yeah.
If the poor performers, if you bifurcate say 5% of the employees every year as poor performers, then new employees you get in place of them have to be better performing than the old performers.
Yeah,
But that's not what happens. How it happens,
sure.
So he has actually proved with statistics and details. And this study is very interesting. It's available on, and it's a free article. You can read it anywhere.
Okay,
Irrespective of whether you're a member of Harvard Business School
Sure.
publishing or not, you can access to that article. Read that article. It's very interesting. And anybody who wants to know about the performance management system of organization.
sure. So here are 3 things you can do. And I have done all of these things and more with phenomenal results. First thing, ask what they like about their job and what they hate about their job. Okay? This thing should be done anonymously, and in today's world, you can set it up on SurveyMonkey or hire another independent organization to get that done for you. When you find that there is commonality between the things that they hate, that means you need to do some introspection, look inside as to why is it that so many employees are talking about the same thing. Start getting rid of those. Point number 2, none of this is rocket science and none of this is difficult. I just don't understand why companies lose sight of this. Okay? Point number 2, ask, and this you can talk directly to the employee and ask them what work they would be interested the most. One of the girls that used to work for me, she was always at the edge of getting written up for absenteeism. She would sit in her car until it was 8 o'clock, and exactly at 8 o'clock she would enter, and exactly at 5 o'clock she would walk away. Even if some work was pending, exactly at 5 o'clock she would walk away because the clock said, I need to go. That was a clear indication that she was not engaged. All she was doing was coming there to collect a paycheck. That was the department that I inherited with 30% employee turnover. So I sat down with her one day and I said, Cindy, you are a great person, I respect you a lot, but help me understand, of all the work that is happening in my department, you know, some people were cutting metal samples, some people were polishing metal samples, some people were taking pictures of, cross sections, some people were operating microscopes, some people were doing chemistry work. I was running an R&D group at that time. Out of all the work that you see in the department, give me 1 or 2 assignments that you really would love doing. And she said, I enjoy photography. And you know the work that she was doing? That poor lady was cutting metal samples and polishing them. Now, how stupid is that? And I had no idea why she had to do that and who started her on that. I just inherited the department. So the next thing I do is I say, Cindy, okay, I'm so glad you shared that with me. Would you like to switch your role and have half of the job content become what you really enjoy doing, and the other half we all need to put up with? So at least half of your job will be directly in alignment with who you are. At the core, you are a photographer. She was delighted. And in 1 month, she was there inside the door at 7:30. I didn't have to do anything. All I did was reassign the job roles and responsibilities. How difficult is that? It's not difficult. But even today, how many managers really sit down with you and ask you the question honestly, what is it that interests you? What are your skills? What are your abilities? And what do you want to do? It is so simple, and still people don't do it. You know? And the third thing, invest. This investment, you demonstrate as a leader that you are taking a personal interest in their career. You are investing in them for training and education and taking their abilities to the next level. That shows them that you are committed to them. And a small amount of investment here pays enormously rich dividends. Now people say that, oh, if I train this person, I invest $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 in them on training, tomorrow they may walk away. And I say, you're out of your mind to be thinking like that. You want to retain an employee that is performing much below where they are capable of just to save $3,000? Don't invest and they stay, and do you know what you are losing? So even if they walk away, even if the tendency is there to walk away, you did some good in this world, that's okay. But this investment sends a very big message to all your employees. Don't hesitate, don't cut corners on that. Last one.
Ryan, we're out of time.
We are out of time?
Yeah, we're out of time. So
Okay.
let's wrap it and then we can do this after.
Okay, great. So
Cold beer, we have wine, we have food here ready to go.
I have one, I'll just read the question if you want to meet with me.
Yeah,
I'm happy to do that, and then we can do it one-on-one, okay? I would love to be, I would love to be the Amazon and Ritz-Carlton for for dental equipment distribution. Somebody here wants to get into the medical business, distribution business. Unfortunately, I cannot answer this question because our time is out, but I'm happy to entertain the question one-on-one. Visit with me. I'm here for a little while. How's that?
Perfect. Yes.
Okay? Very good. Thank you.